cooperative care. And that is the process by which the dog can fully engage in its own veterinary care, isn't stressed, isn't moving around, it's just stood nice and solid for the vet to do their thing. Now, a solid hand target coupled with a thorough desensitisation and counter-conditioning training so that they're not stressed by your handling the paws, not stressed by all the various handling, can then make veterinary care and basic care much less stressful for the dog and a pleasant experience for everybody. Now, we're not going to cover the desensitisation and counter-conditioning side today. We're only covering the hand targeting side and the proofing of the hand target. However, if a dog's injured and they've got a really solid hand target, the fact that they are stressed by the wound being cleared is eased by the being really concentrating on the hand target. Can do a short hand target like that and turn that into a long hand target out and about. That process is called proofing, and that applies to however we use any behaviour. You need to proof it, you need to prepare the dog so that they can perform that behaviour at duration anywhere with anything going on. And that's what we're doing today. So, proofing is generally broken down into 3 or 4 Ds, and they are distraction, duration, distance, and then the 4th one that gets added is difficulty. I've added the 4th one in for difficulty because there's many ways that we can make the target more difficult, more challenging, more enriching for the dog. So I've included that one as well. So if we look at distraction and we think about the vet's office, we've got vets moving around, we've got vet nurses moving around, we've got vets stroking the dog, got all manner of things going on. And we are going now just to think about the vet is going to come and examine your dog. First of all, good to do that. As you can see, Percy backs off from that. Many dogs do. So we can work on that so that he can hold his target while I put my hand there. So we'll work like that and then we'll move on to duration. I've got you the beginnings of a training plan and more explanation in the course. So this is just going to be a get you started and then head to the course for the rest. So, distraction. So at the moment, you can target. Your first distraction will just be really, really minor. So if you've been in the habit of holding your other hand out of the way, your distraction might be touch, wiggle your fingers. So your first one might be touch, wiggle your fingers. And you will do that 3 or 4 times. Touch, touch. If you've got an idiot like mine, and he's tending to come in for a bite, then I would just backtrack and go back to an easier level. So touch, wiggle. Now remember, this to the moment you're just doing distraction and not duration. So the fact that he came off, I'm not worried about right now. So your first level was that, your next level, touch, might be a bit bigger. And then touch, a bigger jazz hand. And now, because our target is the vet, I'm going to touch, I'm going to move the hand towards the dog. And do 3 of those. Touch, Percy, touch, touch, touch. Right, touch. So can you see, he moved away twice, and so I modified what I was doing and made it easier for him. So I'll do another easy one, touch, another easy one, before we graduate again. So 3 more easy ones. Touch. And you can see it's acing the easy ones. Touch. So this time when I do a more difficult one, I'm not going to go quite as far. Pussy. Treats everywhere. Touch. So if you see, I kind of went halfway that time. Touch. 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 Okay, so taking it really, really steady. Touch. Touch. Good. Before you go all the way out and you're actually on the dog. Touch. Touch. No. Good. Touch. Good. Pussy. Touch. Okay. Touch. Touch. And I mean, he's got all sorts of distractions right now because Neil's actually complaining in the other room because I started out with him and then switched to Percy. So there are a lot of distractions going on and he's doing great. Really, you want one distraction, work up to a point with it, another distraction, work up to a point, then combine them, then go back and work to a more advanced point on one distraction and combine them, and so on until you've got at least so you can stroke the dog. Now before I move on and talk about duration, I just want to mention our reactive dogs. And dogs that just are a bit excited, a bit distracted. If every time another dog comes into view, you ask for a touch, eventually, touch, that distraction of the other dog becomes the reason that the dog targets. You don't even need the word touch, you don't even need to make your hand obvious. Just because another dog comes on touch, your dog will start giving you hand targets. Because the cue, instead of a word or instead of a hand gesture, the cue is now that other dog coming. So that's really good for the reactive darlings. Now then, let's move on and talk about duration. Touch. So we do duration on its own. And when we first do duration, all we're looking for is nose punch. And then we're going for a slightly slower nose punch, working up to a second. Once we get to a second in several increments, touch, yes. You want to get your yes in while your fingers are still on the nose. Yep, that was a punch. Yep. So that the yes is ending the behaviour, not the dog. So he touches, if he comes off, even if he's done 3 seconds, if he comes off and you've not said yes, you don't reward and you go for another go. Yes. Okay. Build your duration gradually. Initially, it's going to be several repetitions of 3 or 5 just to get to a second. So you've got a punch, you've got the slightly slower punch and then another slower punch, I would say at least, before you get as far as a second touch. And then you can build from there. Once you've got to the point that you're ending the behaviour with a yes, so you didn't, yes, then you will find that the duration comes easier. That stretching from 1 second to 5 seconds will be a lot easier than going from a punch to 1 second. Again, there's more in the course. So the next topic is distance. So, there's a distance the dog isn't touched. Is moving to give you a target. There's the distance the dog is moving to go and work a light switch, get it? There's the distance of the distractions of the other dogs. And I want to talk a little bit about that because that's going to be important for you reactive guys. Now, when we talk about distance in terms of reactivity, we need to be aware of how that affects your dog. So people will talk in terms of threshold, and they'll often say, oh, the dog was over threshold. And by that, they will mean that the dog is reacting. And it's not quite so simple. So I just want to talk you through that process for those of you that are dealing with reactivity. We've got various levels. Initially, we've got the dog is aware that the other dog exists, but they don't really care because it's far enough away, it really doesn't matter. Then the next point comes where the dog's there, mum, you seen that dog? Not really sure, but also not really fazed. Then we've got, now we are starting to, we might be drooling, we might be looking the other way, we might be showing the whites of our eyes, we might be smiling, and all the other body language signs. That's the next level, and then the final level is where the dog is going nuts, barking, lunging, whatever. For treating reactivity, we need the dog to be round about that, mum, you seen that dog there? Not sure about that, mum. That's the point that people work on desensitising reactivity. Not when the dog's showing real signs of stress, and definitely not when they're reactive. The more instances of a reactive dog feeling the need to react, going into those stress signs, the more a desensitisation plan gets delayed, gets broken down. They want you back at number 2, back at, not sure, mum. Now, by using the hand target to distract the dog, you can help hold them back to that level 2. So without the hand target, they may be well into level 3, but with it, they may be able to get nearer. Now that's important because in modern life, we often have to get too close to the things our dogs are scared of just because of how close together we all live. So we're going to use the hand target to extend number 2 into number 3. But we're not actually curing anything. That hand target is withdrawn, that dog's still going to react. Whereas when you've worked through a desensitisation protocol, your dog can just relax next to you. Up to a much nearer distance. Some dogs don't fully recover, some dogs do. Neo used to be terrible with cats and doesn't really care anymore. But I have known dogs that haven't got that far through. But certainly this hand target can really help you. So your final D is difficulty. And there's loads of ways of making your target more difficult. Climb them up onto the back of the sofa, that's more difficult. Have them come onto the front of the wheelchair and target up here. Again, you've added some difficulty. We've included it in the proofing plan so that you can then employ it in particularly your reactive dogs or at the vets. So you can give your dog something to do to help prevent the stress. But it also is just neat tricks.